you very much, Nabi. So Pete mentioned in his opening remarks about delivering the value of data, of analytics, of insights to the masses. And our product team and our engineering team and a lot of smart folks have been thinking about this a lot over the last year. What does it mean to deliver these insights in new ways and display data and visuals on new devices and reach consumers, whether they're inside the organization or out in the marketplace, in new ways? And that's really a perfect setup for what you're going to see over the next 40 minutes or so. We've been thinking a lot about what does this future of embedded analytics look like? And so this session really provides, I guess, a sneak peek at what's possible, what this future might look like, but also everything you're seeing today or you will see is possible right now. Now, there's been some long nights and not a lot of sleep in some cases in terms of preparing what you're going to see right now, but what the team has done and what we're going to share with you basically for the first time anywhere is a series of vignettes that really think about and envision some of the latest features in the iHub, some maybe more creative ways to apply BIRT in new ways on new devices. And really, it's, to me, ultimately proof points for what happens when you sort of get some smart developers and engineers, sort of turn them loose with the latest devices and technology. So first up, and I'm just going to advance to the next slide here. The first of our vignettes will be presented by Pierre Tessier. And what we're aiming to show you is what's possible when you really re-envision rich, fluid visualizations on new types of devices. So Pierre, what are we actually going to see here?
We're going to see a showcase of a new API that we created specifically aimed for mobile. It's not exclusive to mobile. It could be used everywhere. Paired with an SDK around this API, which enables us to be more native applications. So previously, we've always been able to do mobile apps, but they were of the hybrid style, if you will. And
so maybe for the audience who's not quite up on all the sort of styles of mobile development, tell us what native is. What does that mean versus like native hybrid versus hybrid?
So if you're native and you're Objective-C, you're going to age about 25 years just looking at it. It's not pretty code to look at. I know this myself. I've gone bald recently. Native means you're writing code to the device directly. And hybrid means you're writing an application that contains a web application. The biggest difference between the two of them is one of them, it's easier to code, develop, maintain, and deploy across a multitude of devices. The other one provides a more fluid, performant experience. So what we're going to showcase here is actually a mixture of both inside of one app. We want to showcase when it's right to use one type of thing and when it's right to use the other kind, all enabled by the same back-end infrastructure, iHub, sharing API calls between the two of them. They actually balance each other out when we do it all properly.
Cool.
So, if we will, get started here. This app, we called it BIRT Gazetteer. I did not pick the name. Probably would have picked something else.
Because it rolls off the tongue. That's why we picked it.
So well. It's much better than the other names, but it is what it is. It's an application about worldwide demographics. Really good data, rich data out there in the world. So first off, what we're going to do is we're going to actually log in. I got a server sitting here in a room somewhere. It's going to serve up this data for us. And what we do when we log in, we actually go after a BIRT data object. These are those in-cache, high-performance data object models that we have out there that we've been able to create. You can put a little bit of business logic in there, that you do your queries, you aggregate multiple data sources if you have to. And we went off into that BIRT data object, and we pulled down a bunch of data to initialize this initial screen here. We see on the left-hand side some various breakdowns, if you will, and each time I hit one of these breakdowns, you're going to see the chart data on the right updates. Every time I'm touching, we're making another call to that BIRT data object to go populate the data just for that specific area I'm touching. And this initial chart you see here is a native chart. We have another native chart. And then over here, we actually have a non-native chart. So this is something that you actually created inside the BIRT Designer. Now, important to note here is that all of this is fed from BIRT. All the data is coming in from BIRT. And these other native charts you see here are just iOS charts that somebody out there in the world created, and using our SDK, we're able to populate them very easily with data. In fact, the data binding is about 3 lines of code. So that was pretty nice. And we could continue on. We got a lot of this application. I like to go in through here, and I am from Canada, so we're going to go look at Canada stuff here.
And just to be clear, what we're seeing up here on the screen is what you're seeing there right on your iPad. Just people having sort of connected the dots here. So this is...
We got an AirPlay device somewhere over here. We love technology at Actuate, especially wireless technology for some reason. What I like to do with this one here is showcase a little bit about how this chart works. So what we did is we loaded down the data for all the years and fed it into the chart. And I like to say kind of starting about a decade, a little more than a decade after the baby boom, if you will. And you kind of see the people in my country age with time as I slide my finger slowly across there. You see the 0 to 14 slice gets smaller and smaller, and the other two slices continue to grow. I like kind of doing that little fluid animation there. It's fun, if you will. But continuing on, right, I still have these other BIRT charts. Maybe we could go to the United States here, and what we're going to look at is the GDP per capita. And I could come here because BIRT charts allow me to do this. And we could zoom in all the way down to 2008. You can kind of see that, hey, that's when the crash happened. And people say the economy has recovered. Well, according to GDP, the economy hasn't been better. Okay? So it's interesting that I'm able to garner this information. And all we did was we went out there and we found a data source out there for world data. Continuing on, what if I want to get more details in my application? I want to see more stuff. We have reports, beautiful details. Take my iPad, turn it this way here, and it's going to come back and get me a wholly different view of that same data, laid out very differently. So that pie chart in the top right used to be in the bottom left. We actually looked at this screen and said, depending on how you're holding your device is how we're going to represent the data to you and what works best based on your screen dimensions.
So technically, how's that happening at the back end there?
Well, behind the scenes, what we do is we actually have a couple reports behind the scenes, and we laid out the information differently in both reports. But because we're using the same BIRT data object, the generation time for these reports is very fast, right? We're not going back to the data source. We're going in, pull the data, render it right away. And what we're using to do this rendering here is what we would consider our hybrid mode. We're using the API we call the JavaScript API, or JSAPI, if you hang out with me a lot. Continuing on, I like that view and all, but I really like to hold my iPad like this. Let's go to the map view. And this one here is actually going to go out and live on the internet. And unfortunately, we don't embed the map into the app. We actually went out and sourced it live. And on the right-hand side, you have three numbers: population, average GDP, and life expectancy. And you got a button. It's hard to tell, but those three numbers is a BIRT report embedded inside of my application to look like it's part of my application. And if I continue and touch various
well, that's
countries,
the point, that you can't tell, right? You just said it.
That's the point, right? You don't want to tell people you have a BIRT report in here, but that's what it is. And that one there is actually served up via our JSAPI interface. We could have very easily have just gone and get the data and populated 3 text boxes in a native app. But we wanted to showcase the technologies, not pick a different route. And that's what we did here. So I could come here and, again, coming from Canada, I'm kind of proud of this one. In Canada, we lived to 81. Americans, not quite so much. 79. You're not far, though. You guys are catching up. Keep at it, right?
So newsflash is beer and bacon is good for you.
Maple syrup on your bacon. Eh?
It's worth at least 2 years.
Yeah, eh? That's what it's all about. I like to keep on harping on that one. And again, we continue. In this case here, I could go back and jump out to the world. And I wanted to show this a little bit as well. The details view for the world looks like this. If I come back and I'll say we'll go to Africa, a continent, the details view for Africa is a completely different report, right? Different layout, different even data points in different areas of the report. And that's something we really wanted to be important to showcase here. So all in all, our message here is that we now provide 2 different APIs for mobile development. We support both flavors of mobile development in the same app, and both APIs are cross-platform. I know we have some Android fans in here. I'm personally not, but they work. We support both. And coming up, you're going to see a little bit for the other side of the house as well. And it's important. I know you guys are looking at doing some mobile deployments. Can you control what your employees have in the field? I know actually we can't. Everybody just picks up their own device. Oh, I got an iPad. I got a tablet. I want to see it on my Note 4, whatever that thing is. And I want to see it on my Samsung device. And next thing you know, people are saying, I want to see it in my Tesla. I'm telling you, it's coming. We're not far away from that, right? So, anything else?
So apparently people can actually play around with this because we're delivering this app with the 3.1 release. So this is something that people can download and they can play with.
We are actually going to put this entire app, all the content and everything else on GitHub for everybody to go ahead and download freely. That's where I got it from. And we're going to be able to go ahead and play with it, use it, understand it, and replicate it for your own self. So we don't want to call it's our best practices way of doing things. It's a showcase of way to do things. We're using reportlet bookmarks in some cases. Other cases we're using straight up reports. Other times we're doing data. We show how you do authentication, how you share authentication amongst different aspects of the app. So all of that stuff is all represented very well with comments inside the application, and there will be a little guidebook to go along with it as well.